What is up, all of you beautiful people, and welcome back to episode number 2 of Boards and Buckets with my buddy, CBB Nick, who you can follow on Twitter at CBB Nick. And wow, this is a fantastic time if you are a college basketball fan or just somebody that likes to bet recreationally on college basketball. And man, there's endless things to talk about. We're right now in this episode we're going to be working through the 2023 NCAA Tournament bracket, but obviously you have the NIT coming up, the CBI if you are a hardcore college basketball fan as well. But you can really talk for hours about brackets and go a number of different ways. Obviously, everybody's searching for that perfect bracket, but let's get realistic here and just kind of pick one that at least resembles some sort of level of accuracy there. Nick, when Selection Sunday hit, I imagine you and I were in the same position of we had CBS on. We probably picked a comfy spot on the couch, maybe a beer. And
Yeah.
what were your biggest takeaways as far as just what annoyed you? What was, I guess, unexpected, and what were you hoping to happen that maybe did or didn't happen?
Yeah, there's a couple things actually. I think one of the biggest things that I think everyone's talking about is Rutgers getting snubbed out of the tournament overall. I think that the net was just kind of ignored, and they had the first four out as like OK State, which fair enough, they were very close. I think they could have made an argument to be in as well, but then like UNC was also in there, which makes no sense. So I think that was one takeaway, is just Rutgers being snubbed out. One thing for like a homer angle is I really wanted Duke to be in the East region where they ended up being. But we got baited on the CBS on the stream. If you were watching, it said that they were going to be in Greensboro, and then a second later it flipped and they were in Orlando. So if they were playing in Greensboro, it was basically home court advantage for them. But it is what it is. I think I'm happy with where they ended up in terms of region. I think those are probably the two biggest things. I think the number one seeds are right. I think those four teams are the best. I think maybe the order of them is a little bit off. But again, that's just ticky tack stuff. But yeah, those are my two big takeaways.
Yeah, and to go back to the Rutgers one, the reason why that one surprised me is the week before, during the Big Ten tournament, when before they had even played their first game against Michigan, there was a report out that the committee was officially going to be looking at that loss on the road to Ohio State as a win because of how controversial the ending was. And the
Yep.
Big Ten obviously came out and said that, that was ruled incorrectly. Rutgers should have won the game. And the report said, that's going to be a quad one win. They're going to add that to the resume. So if that's true, they essentially took a 20-13 Big Ten team with an extra quad run road win and just said you're out of the tournament. And
Right.
that's just, especially when they went out swinging against Purdue to end their season. That was their final impression. I don't really know how the committee kind of judges sorts of things like this. And yeah, seeing North Carolina nearly make the tournament right in the bubble, it just was so weird. NC State as an 11 is weird
Yeah.
to me. And then Kentucky being seeded over, say, like an FAU or a Texas A&M.
Yeah, that was another one. A&M seating is weird because they finished SEC in second in the regular season and then lost to Bama in the tournament. So I mean I think their seating is off for sure.
Yeah, you would say the logic would be, oh well, they would be the second highest seeded SEC team, pretty
Exactly.
pretty easily. But what is what it is. We can always bitch about the committee every single year. I feel like they don't really care about a lot of these mid majors. One of the ones that really bothered me was that Florida Atlantic seeding. Um, they that should be a or seven seed. And instead, they are playing with the highest upside eight seeds right out the gate in Memphis. And
Yep.
then if they do make it past Memphis, they're going round two and playing Purdue, a one seed.
Yeah.
So wow, just like just tell us like on the surface committee that we don't really value these mid majors. We just kind of want them to get bounced so we can get TV ratings up. I mean, that's just kind of
Yeah.
how it feels to me there. But
I assume that's probably what it is behind the scenes too. Like they don't really care. They want them to get bounced. They like a dream scenario for them is like, you know, Duke, UNC, like Kentucky and UCLA or something. Just like four like straight blue bloods in the Final Four is what they want.
Oh yeah, they don't want a single file like mid-major team in the Elite Eight. You know,
No.
because like even St. Peter's, their games last year when they were making their run, the lowest television ratings, which again, I don't understand as just a college basketball fan. How can you not fall in love with a Cinderella like that? But who knows? But hey, let's jump right into this bracket because I'm chomping at the bit here. And as we look at this, the South Regional is where we're going to be starting here with Alabama spearheading the 1 seed. So in that playing game for the 16 seed spot, we have Texas A&M Corpus Christi from the Southland, and then Southeast Missouri State from the OVC. Winner of that will play Alabama. Who do you have winning that playing game?
I'm gonna go with Alabama. Oh, the playing game. Sorry. I think is it Corpus Christi and SEMO?
Yep, it's going to be
I
Corpus
think
Christi and SEMO.
I think I'm gonna back the boys from the island. I think Corpus Christi is a really good team. I've watched a couple of their games. I haven't watched too many, but I would side with them in that game.
Yep, I am right there with you. So if we advance them there, they'll be obviously playing in 2 days later against Alabama.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on how that game goes? Obviously, we're probably taking chalk on the ones for the most part, unless you surprise me. But do you think that is a game, or how do you see that game playing out?
No, I think Alabama, like on the court, Alabama is, I think, by far the best team in the country. I think they've proven it throughout the season. Going into that SEC tournament, like, yeah, Mizzou had a good first half against them, but other than that, I mean, they like dominated most of like all of those games. So no, I don't think Alabama's going to have any trouble taking out Corpus Christi.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I will say Corpus Christi, I think, is the strongest of these 16 seeds that are out there. Personally, that's what I believe. So I think maybe like a first half spread. We'll see when we get there. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But
Right.
I do think they can come out firing and maybe just like well, who knows in that first half. But as we work down to that 8-9 between Maryland and West Virginia, really good game. I think a lot of
Yep.
West Virginia fans are upset that they didn't get a 10 or a 7 seed. Just like something, a easier draw. But what are your thoughts on who advances out of that one there?
I do side with West Virginia. Obviously, this isn't a road game, but Maryland has been awful when they're not on their home court this year. And West Virginia, I've watched them down the stretch. They are an impressive team, and they can definitely put up points on a team like Maryland. So I'm gonna side with the Mountaineers.
Yep. I'm also going the Mountaineers. I think their shot volatility or scoring volatility is the only knock against them, but I think they're kind of built for tournament play. So I will also take the Mountaineers to advance there as well. And then we work down to a 5-12. This is going to be a very highly talked about matchup, not just because the public loves taking these 12-5 upsets, and obviously it's become a major trend over the years, but a lot of people love this College of Charleston team as just being a darling. They won 31 games. What are your thoughts on how this 5-12 matchup plays out?
Yeah, I've been not a hater of SDSU, but I haven't been as high on them as most people have been all season. I think their stats speak for themselves. They are one of the best teams in the country. They're a 5 seed for a reason. But even though I've doubted them in Mountain West play and I've bet it against them almost every time that I bet on a game they're in, I'm going to side with them here. I don't think Charleston is obviously everyone's darling. They had an amazing season. It's a great team. But San Diego State's defense is very top tier. And if they can get that offense going, obviously we've seen games where they've struggled, like in that Fresno game towards the end of the year, they put up like 48 points. I don't think that offense is going to show up versus Charleston. I think this is just a different level of competition. So I like San Diego State.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I'm also not a big fan of Charleston. I think Pat Kelsey's an amazing coach. I think he's on well on his way to being one of those guys whose name is thrown around this offseason as one of the power coaches to take over somewhere. But I am also going to go San Diego State. I just think that they are the much better team, and Charleston had to catch a lot of breaks just to even make the field. So I'm going to go to San Diego State there. And then as we go down to that 4-13 between Virginia and Furman, another one that this is the upside side of the bracket as far as what I've seen so far on social media. A lot of people taking Furman. What are you thinking there in that matchup?
Yeah, this was a tough one for me because Virginia is obviously Virginia, right? They're a great team, great program. They're always going to be in the conversation. Maybe not this year to win it all, but they're not usually a team that gets bounced in the first game. But this is tough because Furman is a very good team. Mike Bothwell on that team, 18 points per game. They have really good guards. They got a good forward and Slauson. This team is good. So I have Furman advancing, but I would back Furman on the books too. I think, if we're talking spread, I think it's a 5-point game. I like catching points with Furman, but I also have them advancing, but I think it's going to be a really close game.
Yeah, I think this definitely has a potential of an upset. I do have a bet on Virginia personally, but like you just kind of said, they do have a lot of talent on that team. I think they unfortunately caught one of these threes or fours that they've already been upset by Ohio and UMBC obviously in the past 8 years
Right.
under the same head coach with a lot of the same players still lingering around there too. They're a very experienced bunch. I I just have a hard time feeling like they are just going to come out, waltzing into the tournament. I think if they were to catch maybe one of these more upstart, random 3 or 4 seeds, they would definitely pull an upset. But I am going to trust Virginia to advance there for me personally.
Yeah,
Um,
I like the experience that you bring up in this situation where these guys have been a part of that UMBC upset and the upset against the Bobcats. But overall, I know a lot of people love the experience where there's, junior and senior upper class on their team. I don't think that's a factor for me in general. In this spot, I do agree just because they have that bad taste in their mouth of getting bounced early by teams that they should have no problem beating. So I do like that angle for Virginia.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think experience kind of plays out different ways. You're going to have guys that have made it to a Sweet 16 before, and they just think, well, we have to get back to that spot, and they might be overlooking like a first round matchup. But when you have that, yeah, that bitter taste in your mouth from truly like it's embarrassing for these guys when they do lose that first opening matchup. It's a higher seed like that. I do think that comes into play because you rarely see it again with the same group ever. That's just kind of how it goes. I mean, we saw it obviously with Virginia after UMBC's upset. They go and win the national championship game. So,
Right.
it definitely, I think, comes into play. As we move down to that 6-11 game, another fun matchup as far as just the athleticism and the pace of this game is going to be pushing. But we have Creighton, the 6 seed, going up against the 11 seed in NC State. Again, I thought NC State was over seeded for sure. I thought they should have been in the play-in line or a 12 maybe. But what are your thoughts on who advances out of that one there?
Yeah, I agree with what you said. I thought maybe Clemson should be in this spot just instead of NC State entirely. But yeah, I'm going to take Creighton here. I like NC State. I love their guards. Those two are awesome to watch. Joyner and Smith, like that. If you want to talk about guard play, like those two are awesome to watch.
Hmm.
They'll put up 50 on you in the blink of an eye, and it's not even hard for them. But I'm not going to trust them in this spot versus a team in Creighton that I think is just better than them.
Yep. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I am going to also take Creighton to advance there. I think they can push the pace. I feel like Baylor Shireman is just a guy that lives in March with that headband. I feel like we're going to be seeing them in the Sweet 16 or the next round, and he's going to be making some big shot, and they're going to be playing the twinkling music or whatever whatever it's called. I can just see it, visualize it in my head. Um, but as we work down to that 3-14 matchup with Baylor and UC Santa Barbara. Okay, so big fan of the Big West this year. UC Santa Barbara came out of that. It was a war of a conference tournament. Who do you see advancing out of there? Because obviously Baylor had a slow end to their year, but they're
Mhm.
still very talented. So who are you going with there?
Yeah, I'm gonna take Baylor. I think UCSB is a good team, and I think they might make this one a lot closer than a traditional 3-14 game. But I don't think Baylor. I think playing in the Big 12 is the definition of getting battle tested all year. So when you go up against a team that doesn't have that type of experience all year, doesn't have the type of players that the Big 12 has, I think you're gonna see a big skill gap. But I wouldn't be surprised if UCSB makes a game out of it.
Yeah, this is another one where a first half bet I think would be very interesting. I do think Baylor has the athleticism, the scoring, the guards, the defense. They feel like a complete team to me, like a couple others in this bracket that are, or not this side of the bracket necessarily, but in the field that I am intrigued to take a future on potentially. But yeah, I don't think at the end of the game this is going to be within one possession. So I'm going to take Baylor to advance to that second round there. And then as we work down to a 7-10 matchup between Missouri and Utah State, a lot of people are eyeing this one. As far as the questions I'm getting on social media, this is the game that I'm getting the most questions about. People just asking who you're taking in the bracket, where you leaning, is
Wow.
the over a good bet? I just feel like this is one where it's a true pick 'em. Where are
Yes.
you going with this one here?
That's awesome. I actually like that people are interested in this game because Utah State isn't a team that you think of when you think of March Madness, but I've paid close attention to Utah State. I've been betting on them all year. I was betting on them throughout the Mountain West tournament. I had them against San Diego State, and man, it was a good game, but they couldn't pull it out. This is hard because Missouri's athleticism and just being in the SEC, I think, is a big advantage. But Utah State is one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. They're good offensively. I think they're good defensively too. I hate to do it. I have Missouri beating them, but this is a game that like right before it tips off, I could switch 100 times because I really like Utah State. They've been my darling all year, and I don't like betting against them and having them get knocked out. I just feel like I give the slight edge to Missouri. But yeah, like people were asking you on Twitter and the comments, like the over it's hard because it's a March Madness game. You never know how these kids come out the first half. They might have 50 points total. But yeah, like if this was a non-con game, like in the beginning of the season, I would slam the over because these offenses are really good. But yeah, I'll take the Tigers.
Yeah, and this is again, like kind of like you said, this is a game that right before tip, if I want to bet it, just to have some action on it, I could be easily swayed one way or another. Just somebody's random comment on Twitter could be like Utah State, period, and I'll be like, all right, you talked me into it. I'm convinced.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
I'm gonna ride with my what a buddy of mine on Twitter, Brendan Schaefer, said. He covers the St. Louis Cardinals down there. Good follow if you are a baseball fan, but he essentially said, "Well, if Missouri can show up and shoot, and I was like, that's such a great comment because they're so volatile, right? There are some games where they look like, oh my goodness, this team can run anybody out of the gym, and then there are some games where it's like, geez, they cannot hit a shot to save their life. So unfortunately, I've been telling some people soft lean towards Missouri. I'm benedicting on that and going Utah State to advance the second round there. And that might be a bet. I don't know. But I'm going to take Utah State to advance the second round there. And then as we work down to that 2-15 matchup between Arizona and Princeton, I think this is actually a better ball game than what a lot of people were thinking heading in. But who do you have advancing just on the outright win part of that side?
Yeah, we're gonna take Arizona, but like you said, this Princeton team is good. I watched their games in the Ivy League tournament. I was betting on them in that first game, and they're a good team. I think they can score. I think they can put up points. I think they keep it relatively close with Arizona. I'm not a possession, maybe not even two. But if we're talking, I don't know, 9, 10 point game, I can see them staying, closer out of that. But I'll take Arizona to move on.
Yeah, this is one where if you do want to take a St. Peter's type shot, I think this is your team because they can't shoot the ball. And I will say something that I am gonna bet before tip, and I might release this pick as like an official play for this channel, is Princeton first half money line. I mean, I think also spread is a good play, but this is a team where I think they could put some fear of God in Arizona right out the gate, and Arizona be like down 8, at the first or second media timeout, and everybody's like, "Oh, what's going on in that 2-15 game?" But yeah, I do like Arizona to advance, but Princeton can give them a ball game, so I do like that one. It's just as a viewer for sure. Um, Now let's head up to the second round of the South Regional, and we both have West Virginia going up against Alabama. Good game, I think.
Yep.
Um, who are you taking to advance the Sweet 16 there?
I'm gonna back the Crimson Tide. I'm gonna go with Alabama. I think at any point in this region, Alabama is gonna have the best defense on the court and the best player on the court. So I'm gonna back Alabama here.
And I would say that's a safe bet for sure. I think this would be a West Virginia bet on the spread for me, depending on where it opens up.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to open up anything below, +5 for West Virginia. Um, oh, do I do it? Do I dare? I've been talking all year. There's a few teams that I want to fade. I always say in kind of a general conversation, want to fade in March. Bama was one of those teams that made my list. The SEC tournament run they went on was really impressive. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. This is gonna be on a few of my brackets. Obviously, I'm gonna fill out more than one, but I'm going to take West Virginia to beat Alabama. I think Alabama, as far as a Sweet 16 run, sure, maybe possible. I don't think they get to the Elite Eight regardless out of this bracket or this side. So I'm going to take West Virginia to pull off a first major upset as far as this region goes here. So that is who I would advance this second round there. Um, but as we go down to this next line, it's going to be we both have. Actually, no. So this is going to be a little bit different for both of us. So
Yep.
I have San Diego State going up against Virginia, and you have San Diego State going up against Furman. So two really fun matchups, regardless of who sort of ends up slotting there. But who do you have advancing to your Sweet 16?
Yeah, again, I'm going to take the Aztecs. I think on either matchup here, I think that San Diego State Virginia game would be a very close game, and it might end like 35 to like 40 because their defenses are just so good. But yeah, I think even if I switch to Virginia, which is possible too, I think San Diego State advances.
Yep. Yeah. And I do think, again, San Diego State has the talent, they have the guards, they have the good coaching, and I think they have the experience that's necessary to, once you get in this tournament like setting of round of 32, you can start thinking about Sweet 16. I do like their ability to potentially make a run out of this side of the bracket, especially if you're taking off, or I'm picking off Alabama there in the second round as well. So I am going to take San Diego State to beat Virginia in mine. I think Virginia is a good team. I think that's going to be a great game. That's one of those games that's like, I'm going to sprinkle, a little bit of money on the overtime possibility because it just feels like those two teams are going to be trading barbs the entire time. But yeah, I will take also San Diego State to advance to my Sweet 16 as well there. Um, as we go down to our second or third second round matchup, we have both Creighton going up against Baylor. Fun game. Fun game if you like just again high-paced basketball, a lot of scoring, a lot of talent on the court in this game. Who do you have advancing to that Sweet 16 there?
I'm gonna back the Bears here too. I just think their guards are super impressive. Obviously, Brian Kalkbrenner and Shireman are ballers on the side of Creighton, but I'm gonna trust in Baylor's guards to get the job done and take out the Creighton team.
Yeah, and I would say it's a pretty good bet. I'm going to take Creighton personally. I think this team is so loaded with talent, and outside of a stretch where they didn't have Ryan Kalkbrenner this season, they were one of the best teams in my opinion that I saw just from the eyeball test, from a shooting efficiency perspective, and just overall play on the court and just competing in games whether it was at home or on the road. I think Creighton has the ability to get it done and potentially make a run again out of the side of the bracket. So I'm going to take Creighton to beat Baylor. I really wasn't impressed with how Baylor finished the year. I wanted to buy into that team so much, and they just kind of looked flat. 2 times against Iowa State, and then just a number of different spots, whether it was on the home or on the road. Couldn't put together two good halves of basketball. So I'm gonna fade them there in the second round and take Creighton to advance there. And then as we work down to that next matchup here, we have a little bit of a different one here. So you have Missouri going up against Arizona, and I have Utah State going up against Arizona. Who you feel advances out of that one there?
I got Arizona moving on too. I think this team is built to make a run in this tournament. I think you can make an argument with them in UCLA. I think with Jalen Clark being out for the season, that Arizona is the best team coming out of the Pac-12. So I trust them to get deep in this tournament.
Yeah, and I think if my kind of prediction comes true where Arizona does, avoid that Princeton miracle upset,
Yeah.
I would also take, I think Arizona would stop whoever comes out of that 7-10 matchup. I have Utah State there, but it does feel like one of those games where we see in the second round a team with a lot more talent just lay the hammer down and win like 84-56 or something ridiculous. So I am going to take Arizona to also advance to my Sweet 16 there. But as we go back up, so here's where I'm going to put the onus on you a little bit here as far as kind of tracking who we got. So you have Alabama going up against San Diego State, correct?
Yep.
Perfect. So out of that matchup, that I would, man, I just love talking about hypothetical matchups, even if I'm not taking them myself, because this game seems like it would be fun. But who do you have advancing out of that to your Elite Eight?
Yeah, I'm gonna take Bama. This is gonna this if this happens, this again would be a really good game because you have two efficient offenses, two awesome defenses. So it's gonna be a very close game. I don't think like one team is gonna decidedly win. But again, I think Bama has the best defense in this region, and I think they have the best player in this region on their team. So I'm gonna go with Alabama.
Yep. Yeah, and I think in that hypothetical matchup, I would also take Alabama, just assuming that in that scenario, Alabama just cruised by, their 16 matchup, their 8 or 9 matchup, and then they had that one. So I think they would be clicking at that point personally. Um, and I would take them there if that was my scenario. Given that my scenario is West Virginia going up against San Diego State, this would be a fun matchup just stylistically, I think. And you're gonna have two fun head coaches to watch on the sideline in this one as well. Um, I'm going San Diego State. I think this team, again, you have to everybody, once the kind of the Elite Eight is set, everybody looks at those teams and just looks at their guards and immediately says, "How did I not see that coming?" Like that should have been something that I saw those guards and saw how good they were, and I should have just taken a shot at them to go to the Elite Eight. Well, I think San Diego State has the guards. I think they have a lot of talent. So I'm going to advance San Diego State to my Elite Eight there. And as we go down to that second Sweet 16 matchup, we are going to have both Arizona in there and a little bit of a different one. So you're going to have Baylor going up against Arizona, and I'm going to have Creighton going up against Arizona. So who do you have advancing to the Elite Eight out of that there for you?
Yeah, this is where I agree with what you said previously of Kansas, or sorry, Baylor can't put together two good halves. We've seen them blow a big lead, and I think if they have a bad first half against Arizona, they're not going to be able to come back. I think Arizona's going to put them away. Even if they don't have that bad of a first half, I still trust Arizona to get the job done. So I got Arizona over Baylor there.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think that if you have Creighton or Baylor, whoever slots in there for you, um, this is gonna be a fun game again. I mean, a lot of hypothetically fun matchups here, and I want to have the balls to take Creighton, but I don't. I think Arizona matches up too well with them. I think Arizona at this point would be clicking offensively and just as in their groove as a whole. So I will take Arizona to advance to my Elite Eight there. And then as we go to the Elite Eight, we've both got a couple fun matchups here. So we have San Diego State going up against Arizona for me, and then we have Alabama going up against Arizona for you. So in that hypothetical matchup, who do you see advancing to the national semifinals?
This is so chalk, but I just got Bama going to the Final Four. I think I don't know why this again, like you said before, this is a team by the like they could just get waxed in like the second round versus West Virginia, and like you'd be like, "Yep, there's Bama again," like because we've seen this happen where they weren't a number one seed, but a couple of years ago, and they're the best offensive team in the country, and then they don't make it that far in the tournament and get upset in the second round or the third round. I could see that happening, especially if they face up for San Diego State, but I'm gonna go with Bama to make it to the Final Four.
Yeah, yeah, and as far as mine goes, the way I have San Diego State lined up with Arizona here, I am gonna take Arizona personally, and to give you guys an idea of just kind of how these odds shake up for winning the region. So spearheading the region at plus 190 is Alabama, and then there's a significant drop off to plus 400 for Arizona, and then the other teams that we kind of had close. So actually down in the 5 spot at plus 900 to win the region is San Diego State at plus 900. And if you want to even go back to the last round, the Elite Eight here, what's kind of interesting is if you go down, hold on, let me find this here. So yeah, you just go to the Elite Eight, and this is a matchup that our team that we had in that round there. San Diego State at plus 425. I really do feel like there's a ton of value with them here, out of this region. Not only just individually as far as bets go and having the guards to compete in these games, even if they don't necessarily advance, but I really do think they have the ability to win this region or at least make it competitive and go to the Elite Eight. So that would be kind of my take on a good value spot there for sure. But yeah, as we hop right back into the East Regional here, we are going to be taking a look at the very top of this bracket at the 116 matchup. And we do have another playing game here with Texas Southern and FDU or Fairleigh Dickinson. As far as that playing game is concerned, who do you think advances out of that one there?
Yeah, I think that'll be a good one. Shout out FDU, Jersey native. My sister went to
Oh, there you
FDU,
go.
but I think they're gonna lose to Texas Southern. I think it'll be a good game. I think Southern edges them out in like a close one, maybe two possession game. But I think it'll be a good game actually.
Yeah, and I also go to Texas Southern just because um, first year head coach for Fairleigh Dickinson. One, they didn't even win their conference tournament. Texas Southern
Yep.
finished the season about as hot as anybody as far as those lower mid majors in the country, and they have a losing record. They're 5 games under 500, and they are the favorite in this matchup. I feel like that line kind of tells you what all you need to know about how that game kind of plays out there. So yeah, I will have Texas Southern advancing here to play Purdue. And as far as this matchup, so everybody loves the shit on Purdue. That's the popular thing right now for sure. Whether you are just a public guy or if you're somebody that actually watches college basketball, Purdue, man, they are just a frustrating team. If and that record is definitely a little bit deceiving, I would say. But in this matchup, who do you have advancing to that second round?
Yeah, I'm one of those people that you just described, but I think they're good enough to take care of Texas Southern in the first round.
God, I would hope so.
Yeah, that would be not good.
If this is a game, boy, oh boy, I mean, there's gonna be critiques for years.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, let's go ahead and advance Purdue. Don't do it to us. Come on, no more UMBC. Well, I would be for it, but just no.
Right.
But yeah, let's take Purdue to advance there, and then we have the one that pisses me off more than any matchup in this tournament because again, the committee just sucks. I mean, this is an 8-9 matchup between Memphis, who just won the American in convincing fashion over Houston, labeled as an 8 seed. And then you have 31-3 Florida Atlantic as the 9 seed. Oh, just so aggravating. As far as this matchup and who advances, who do you have advancing here?
Yeah, this is a tough one for me because FAU is obviously super good, and I've been a hater on Memphis. I don't I there Kendrick Davis is awesome. What a incredible game he had versus Houston in that championship game. I mean, he was unconscious,
Oh,
just scoring. I think he had like what 21 at halftime or something, like just so easy, and he's really good. I just don't. I don't know if it's from a couple years ago when Memphis started so bad, and like I thought Penny Hardaway was like the worst coach in the entire D1 college basketball, but obviously he's not. Obviously he's good and this team is good. And I feel like Memphis is always an 8 seed. I feel like every year they're around an 8-9 seed. So this is hard though. I want FAU to win. But I feel like Memphis is gonna win. So I'm gonna have the Tigers advancing, but I'll be rooting for FAU.
yeah, I that's kind of the same boat I am. If I didn't have a bet already on Memphis, I wouldn't be upset if FAU won. It's almost like an emotional hedge against my
Exactly.
Cinderella, a hopeful Cinderella. But yeah, I am gonna take Memphis there. Like you said, Kendrick Davis, the talent level of this Memphis team, and the fact that it's not just they're not just playing AAU ball like they were initially under Penny Hardaway. Like that's how it felt when he first showed up there where that team could literally be a different team every single game, play zero defense, and just put up 90 a game. I think they actually have a lot of experience now. I think they have guards that are going to be annoying for whoever they match up against. And unfortunately, I have to end FAU's run before it even starts because of how the committee lined this up, or at least in my opinion, how they lined it up. So I am going to take Memphis to advance to the second round there. And then we head. Oh, this region is so fun. We head
Region's
down.
awesome.
Oh, it's so awesome. We head down to that 5-12 now, and we're looking at Duke, your boys, going up against Aura Roberts. Oh my gosh. They just put all of my, or at least feels like all of my favorite mid majors into this region here. Who do you have advancing out of this 5-12? Another popular dog to take right now.
These 12-5 games, the public is all over the 12 seeds. Obviously, it happens at least, once a year for however many years it's been going on. And dude, everybody is talking about Oral Roberts upsetting Duke because of how good their offense is. But obviously, I completely disagree. I think I obviously Oral Roberts is super talented offensively. Max Asmus is a baller. We've seen him be a baller for the last 3 years. They had that crazy run when they knocked Ohio State off as a 15 seed and make it to the Sweet 16, I believe, is where their run ended. But I mean, they're going up against a Duke team that is on a 9-game winning streak, won the ACC tournament, is 24th in the country at defending the three, and 42nd in the country at defending inside the arc. I don't think Oral Roberts is going to have as good a time scoring against Duke as they do versus South Dakota State, North Dakota State. This is a different level of competition and a different Duke team. Like if you put this Oral Roberts team versus Duke in the beginning of the year, I would be like, oh, we're screwed. But you're giving me Duke at peak Duke right now. There's no, obviously I'm biased, right? But they are the hottest, if not one of the hottest teams entering this tournament. I think these guys have clicked as the season has gone on. You have everybody contributing on Duke's team. I mean, we were heavily relying on Roach to do all of the scoring in the beginning of the season. And in the ACC tournament, you see 5 guys putting up double figures or close to. And obviously, Oral Roberts has that 7-5 forward down low. But that doesn't really scare me because we have Derek Lively down low to play, on the opposite side. So I'm obviously going to back Duke. I'm going to lay the points with Duke. I can't live with myself if I see this matchup and Oral Robert advances. I'll be so sad.
Well, I think you might want to start prepping those feelings because I am taking Aura Roberts to advance here. I've loved this team for years. Even when they were about to make their that year that they beat Ohio State as a 15 seed, I loved them that year. And obviously, they are at their peak in terms of performance, peak in terms of talent. Paul Mills is now a more experienced head coach. They just swept the Summit League. They're gonna have the best player on the floor as well, in Max Asmus. And yeah, Connor Vanover, I think, does kind of get talked about a lot, but at least there's a body down low to match up with Derek Lively, and there's not a lot of teams in the ACC that really can match up with him. And I thought we saw Duke really exploit that down the stretch, especially in that last game against Miami with no Norchad Omier.
Yeah.
And I think this is a game. I think this comes down to the final possession. So obviously I am on the +6.5 because we're getting multiple possessions there with Oral Roberts, and I think we have a ball game here. So yeah, I'd say as far as the outright winner, you could flip a coin, but because for the sake of upsets, because of the sake of I just love Oral Roberts, and I think Max A. Smith is a guy I want to see in the tournament advance and make a run. I'm taking Oral Roberts here to upset Duke, but again, I would not be surprised if Duke wins that as well and just doesn't cover. Um, as far as that 4-13, as we kind of go down the list here, we have Tennessee going up against Louisiana. No Makai Ziegler for Tennessee. I think that's the one thing that a lot of people who are in the know for college basketball are bringing up with a potential Tennessee run. Also, this is a team that's been on my fade in March list, similar with Alabama all season long. And listen, I would have liked a Furman here to pull an upset for sure. But what are your thoughts on this matchup here between Louisiana and Tennessee?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think Tennessee is one of those teams that enters with they are a good team, they're a great team, and they're seeded normally around here, the 3 to 5 seed. But we saw last year with Michigan as the 10 seed, I believe, knock them out. And I think, unfortunately for Tennessee, I'm going to have the Raging Cajuns moving on. I think missing Ziegler is huge. And I just don't. I think this ULL offense is really good. They're going to be able to score against Tennessee. So I'm going to back them.
Yeah, and I would say that's a pretty sound as far as decision is in terms of maybe a straight bet for sure. Just because there's a lot of value there with Louisiana. I was surprised where that line actually opened up. Let me see where it's taking a look at on DraftKings right now, where it's at. Yeah, it was 11 when it opened up, and now I'm seeing 10.5. I mean, I don't think Tennessee covers that. I do think Tennessee wins this game outright. Personally, I think maybe they're not going to be waltzing in this tournament now that they're down one of their star point guards. I think they have the defense to make it a ball game, and I do kind of worry about a team like Louisiana, coming off that emotional Sun Belt championship game, maybe just kind of not shooting up to the highest of efficiencies. I don't know if they have too many great shot creators on that roster that I'm so in love with, like I am some of these other um, potential lower seed upsets. So I'm going to take Tennessee there to advance to play Oral Roberts in my Sweet 16 or my round of 32 rather. But as we go down to the 6-11, okay, now we're talking about something that's real fun. Kentucky, overseeded Kentucky at the 6 seed spot, going up against 11 seeded Providence and Ed Cooley, 11 seed. They're the same seed as NC State. I mean, they didn't finish the season strong, but give me your thoughts on who advances out of this one here.
Yeah, it's a weird seating these two guys. I think both of them are a bit off. This might be Bryce Hopkins' legacy game, transferring from Kentucky now over on Providence. He's the best player on Providence. This one again, I've gone back and forth 10 times, and Kentucky is a team that we've seen get upset in the first round, so I wouldn't be surprised to see it happen again. I want to believe in Providence. I love Ed Cooley and I love this team, but I got Kentucky moving past them on this one.
I hear you. I'm hearing everything you're saying, and that also factored into why I didn't bet this game straight because of Kentucky's upset last year. And I don't care. I think Ed Cooley and Providence are not retires, but gets John Calipari fired. I think this is John Calipari's final game at Kentucky. I don't think Kentucky's fan base or their athletic department is going to take another first round loss in back to back years, especially with how rocky and tumultuous this season was for them in the regular season. So give me Providence here and Ed Cooley to beat Kentucky outright. And essentially, this is John Calipari's last game at Kentucky. That's how it feels, at least in my opinion. But as we
It
go down
feels
to
it feels like that. Like I agree that their fan base is not gonna love if they lose to Providence again. But like, who do you replace him with? He's obviously these last couple of years have been bad, but he is. I mean, he's a legendary coach, and he's brought a lot of guys into the NBA. But I agree with you. If they lose here, it's got to be at least the hot seat is turned. The heat is turned all the way up at least.
and there was legitimate talks about last year him getting fired, and then also the midpoint this season him getting fired as well. I think this would just be too much for them to bear. I mean that's essentially two wasted seasons where you have one of the best players in the country in Oscar Tshiebwe,
Yeah.
and obviously again all those 5 stars you bring in, all those transfer talents. I just don't think Kentucky fans over the athletic department would put up with it again. So yeah, I'm gonna take Providence there. As we work down to that 3-14 matchup between Kansas State and Montana State, this is this is why I love this year because there are a lot of 14, 15, 13, and 12s who are really talented. And Montana State is a shining example because, yeah, maybe not the glossiest record of some of these teams that are coming out of the mid major ranks, but Montana State can fricking play. And Kansas State, they can be volatile at times. So who do you have advancing out of this one here?
Yeah, I agree. I think Montana State is really good. I personally hate that conference. I hate watching those teams play. Some of them, Montana State is one of those that I don't mind watching because they are really good.
Hmm.
This is it's hard. It's hard for me. I'm gonna have Kansas State advancing, but I like Montana State to definitely make a game of it and make Kansas State sweat a bit.
Yeah, this is another one where I've been bringing up a lot, but like a first half money line at at pretty good plus odds. This is one that would strike me as a good spot where I could see it being 32-30 out of the first half, and it wouldn't surprise me at all. So yeah, I'm gonna take Kansas State. I do think eventually they're gonna have the guards that are just gonna be a little bit too much for Montana State to keep up from a scoring pace perspective. But again, do not be surprised if this is a ball game, potentially gonna be a bet for me at some point down the road for just a straight bet as well. But for now, I'm going to take Kansas State to advance outright there. And then as we go down to the 7-10 matchup, so this is a precursor for the futures video that's going to be up on this channel. But Michigan State going up against Southern California, USC. Who do you have advancing out of that 7-10 matchup there?
I'm always going to back Israel and Michigan State in the first round, maybe the second round, even in March. He gets these guys up and gets them ready to go when it comes tournament time. So I'm going to take Michigan State versus USC.
Yep, I'm also taking Michigan State there to advance past USC. Just really don't like this USC team, if I'm being completely honest and I guess forward or blunt about it. I mean, if Drew Peterson was playing better basketball, I think maybe this is a team that you look at the guards and you could maybe convince yourself of a run. But Drew Peterson's playing like and this is one of I think if you don't stay up and watch these Pac-12 games, you don't know this is going on. But Drew Peterson is slumping about as hard as any player in the country right now. Um, so they're a little bit almost it's almost like having an injury, but worse because he's actually playing out there and doing bad. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna take Michigan State there to advance pretty easily. And then as we go down to that 215 between Marquette and Vermont, I mean, again, so many dangerous seeds are sitting down that low. I mean, Vermont is a mainstay in the NCAA tournament every single year, it feels like. And they're taking on Marquette, who a lot of people did not expect to be in a 2 seed role. Who do you got advancing out of this one? Are we seeing a potential upset here, Nick?
Yeah, just like you said, Vermont is like a staple to be in the tournament at this point. Very gifted team, and we've seen Marquette even in their first game in the Big East tournament. Like St. John's I mean, they put it on Marquette and made them sweat. Um, I don't think Marquette will get upset in the game, but again, this is a Vermont team that's going to keep it close and going to make Marquette really play their best ball to get a convincing win or to even get a close win. So I'll have Marquette advancing, but I like Vermont in terms of betting.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I do have a Final Four future that I put on Marquette way back after their game against Baylor earlier this season. So before even conference play started, that it has obviously increased in value substantially. But this feels like a tough draw for them on this side of the bracket. This is a pretty stacked East region, especially with the games they would have initially up there. But yeah, I am also going to take Marquette. Again, another one that Vermont first half money line at just plus odds. I think if you sprinkle on this and, a Princeton and a Montana State, you're getting a lot of value there. I think I think there's going to be at least, if you just hit one or two, you're well in the green, well in the green. So I would definitely maybe have a video coming up about those as well. But as we head up to the top of the second round there, we both are going to have Memphis going up against Purdue. This is everybody's favorite upset spot of this entire bracket. As far as the first number one seed to go down, it's going to be Purdue against Memphis. So, who are your thoughts on who advances the Sweet 16 out of this one here?
Yeah, I mean this is gonna be a game for sure. I think the guard play is gonna be very apparent in this game as Memphis has guards that can play and Purdue really doesn't. But I think obviously Zach Edey could take over this game down low. Um, yeah, again, I think this is one where I'll actually take Purdue to move on. But depending on what that number is, I wouldn't hesitate to unload on Memphis on taking points. But I'll have Purdue moving on.
Yeah, call me basic, call me whatever. I hate this Purdue team. I hate them. I've had bets on them with against Illinois where they won the game. They were up by 20 or so, didn't cover 7 points. I had them in the Big Ten championship game when they were up 18 points against Penn State, and they did not cover -5. I am so done with this team because they can't put together two good halves of basketball, and against a team that can be so electric in the scoring department like Memphis. And we just saw a team very similar style in terms of how they go about the game in Houston just get absolutely boat raced by Memphis. I'm going to take Memphis to advance to the Sweet 16, and I'm pretty damn confident about that one. I think that's going to be a game where if that is the matchup, we're going to see like -2.5, -3.5. It's going to be a very tight spread, I think. So I'm going to take Memphis to advance the Sweet 16 there. And then as we work our way down to that next matchup, so a little bit different, you have Duke taking on a very different. You have Duke taking on Louisiana, and I have Oral Roberts taking on Tennessee. So yeah, drastically different here. Who do
Yeah.
you see advancing out of your Duke Louisiana matchup?
Yeah, I'm gonna take Duke here again. If ULL gets that upset, it's gonna be a different level of competition for ULL that they're just gonna get overwhelmed with how good Duke's been playing. So I'll have Duke move on there.
Yep, I'm absolutely in the same boat if that were my matchup. Because it's not, and I have Oral Roberts going up against Tennessee. Here's where I think No Makai Ziegler is going to kill Tennessee, and there's just their lack of scoring, and really just I don't like that team. So I'm going to take Oral Roberts to advance to the Sweet 16 there and beat Tennessee. And then as we go down here, another different matchup that we have. So you have Kentucky going up against Kansas State, and I have Providence going up against Kansas State. In your Kentucky Kansas State matchup, who do you see advancing to the Sweet 16?
Okay, yeah. Again, this is one. It's so hard to pick because I want to back Kentucky because they're a legendary program, but been so bad the last couple of years when it comes to this tournament, and even in the regular season, they're just unreliable. Again, as you alluded to before too, Kansas State, they're either going to look real good offensively or they're going to get boat race and they can't score. So this is really tough. I'm going to take Kansas State, but like nervously take Kansas State to move on.
This is I think regardless of who comes out of that 6-11 matchup and plays Kansas State in the next round, assuming that is the scenario that plays out, I think it's a true flip of the coin pick 'em. And this is where brackets get busted because how many times can you land on heads and call it? You know what I mean? So I want to take Providence. I want to get there. I can't do it. I gotta take Kansas State. I just think they're so well coached. They have the guards. They have the scoring. They have good enough defense in spots. We saw it at the end of that Kansas game when they played them at home in the Octagon of Doom. But yeah, I'm gonna take Kansas State to advance to the Sweet 16 there. And then as we work down to the next matchup, we both have Michigan State going up against Marquette in the round of 32. Fun game. Who do you have advancing out of this one here?
Yeah, this one's tough because Marquette is a very gifted team, but I think they've gotten so they've had some luck on their side this year.
Yeah.
Obviously not all luck, right? They're a 2 seed, whether it's overseeded a bit or not. I mean, worst case scenario, I would have given them like a 4. So they're obviously still a very good team. But Michigan State, again, a staple, Tom Izzo, awesome legend. I just I want Michigan State to win the game because even as a Duke fan, like I do root for State and Izzo because they're just it's just an awesome program that you love to see win, and basketball is better when they're that good. But I'm gonna have Marquette edging them out here, I think.
And I'd say that's fair. Again, this is a game where I could see the spread being very, very tight. And, again, how many times can you call heads and it lands on heads? Well, this is also going to be an amazing coaching matchup. Probably the coaching matchup of the entire tournament between Shaka Smart and Tom Izzo. I'm going Michigan State. I'm going with my Spartans.
Love it.
I just think again they have the guards, the depth, the all around build, the mold of a team that can make a run out of the 7 or that kind of that seed line of the 7-10. And I want Tyson Walker on my side. I want Hogard on my side. I want Izzo on my side in March. Man, Marquette, I do think if you look at that team and you say, all right, what are their weaknesses? I don't know if they can necessarily handle a lot of those crazy wiry guards like that, especially with some high energetic bigs down low and good ball handlers all around the floor. So give me Michigan State to advance to Sweet 16 there. I really do like this team to make a run in this tournament, and that's going to be lined up with my futures as well. Now, as we head to the Sweet 16, we are looking at some drastically different ones here. So I have Memphis going up against Oral Roberts, and you have
I
Duke.
got Duke versus Purdue.
Duke versus Purdue. Okay, I was
Yep.
gonna say I want to say Purdue, but
Mm-hmm.
perfect. So in your Duke Purdue matchup, again, this is what the television ratings people want you to see.
Yeah.
But who do you think advances to the Elite Eight out of that matchup there?
Yeah, this is also what I want to see because I want Duke to take Purdue down and take the #1 seed out of the tournament. I think even in your scenario, if half of your scenario, if Memphis takes out Purdue, I still like Duke in that matchup. I think that game would actually be closer than a Duke Purdue. I just think the guards on Purdue just are going to be outclassed versus Duke. I think the young guys, even and Jeremy Roach leading that team, their guards are just way better. And I trust Derek Lively down low to at least pressure Edie and not give him as free as a time as in some of the games he's had. Obviously, he's going to get his own. He's going to probably put up 20 and 10. But if we have to just let Edie do all the scoring and their guards aren't doing anything, I think that would be the game plan. I think that's always the game plan, but I think Duke can get it done. So give me Duke.
Yeah, and I would say if however many rounds after the first round Purdue advances to, I will be betting against them every single round. So if it is a scenario of Duke going against Purdue, I'm going to take Duke. If it's Tennessee against Purdue, I'm going to take Tennessee. If it's anybody, I am taking anybody other than Purdue. I do not want to be on that side in March right now. So in my matchup, I have Memphis or Oral Roberts, which I think is a maybe again, it's not going to be the television ratings people's favorite matchup, but as far as just if you love basketball and you've been watching these teams all year, this is a game that is just going to feature so much talent on the floor. And truly, this could be one of these teams could make it to the championship game, and it wouldn't surprise me that they're just that good. I think Oral Roberts does have a lack of depth that Memphis does really have, and because of their guards, I'm gonna take Memphis to go to the Elite Eight, and I think they're a dangerous Elite Eight team as well. But yeah, give me Memphis there, and then as we scoot down to our next Sweet 16 matchup, again, a little bit very different again. So you have Marquette going up against Kansas State, and I have Michigan State going up against Kansas State as well. So as far as your Kansas State Marquette matchup, who do you think advances out of that one there?
As we're doing this, I have my bracket pulled up and I'm following along. But as you were talking about Michigan State, I forgot that Duke and Michigan State are always in the same region and end up playing each other like every single year. So I might have to edit this
Hey,
because
we'll make an asterisk right now. Edit.
because that is something I really I want to happen because it'll be awesome. But I hate playing them. Like I said in our other shows, I hate playing Michigan State because they're just so good. So I might have to adjust this, but we'll go with what I have in Kansas State
No,
Marquette.
no. I'm wipe. I've already made the edit. I've erased it. We're good. So now it's Duke versus Michigan State for you on your side officially there.
I'm gonna change it on mine actually. I'm gonna take Michigan State over Marquette, and I'm gonna take Michigan State over Kansas State just because I do, and it isn't just like it's not a joke. Like if Michigan State gets rolling in March, like they are a wagon.
Yeah.
So going up against a Kansas State team where, again, volatile scoring, Michigan State can play good defense, and they're going to be up for this game, take down a 3 seed to go meet their best friends in Duke in the Elite Eight. Like sometimes the story writes themselves, right? These guys are just going to end up playing each other. It happens every single year. So give me Michigan State to meet Duke in the Elite Eight.
Yeah, and more often than not, I think you just said it, but the committee and TV ratings people work hand in hand when they make these brackets, I swear. And at this point of the season or this point of the bracket, the Elite Eight, the Final Four, it does feel like the storylines write themselves because that's how the committee set it up to be. And
Right.
I think you're absolutely right. I could absolutely see Michigan State versus Duke again. I feel like they always play in the tournament.
Do that every
Um,
year.
Yep. And as far as my matchup between Michigan State and Kansas, we have the same one. I'm also taking Michigan State to advance. So I
Yeah.
don't have Duke at the top of mine for the Final Four, but I do have them advancing and winning the East region. So crazy stuff there. And as we kind of look at just potential, value, obviously we both just took Michigan State there and to reach. So let's start even at the Sweet 16 where we think that, Michigan State has a good chance to reach it at plus 270 on DraftKings there. So not bad value if you are
Nope.
kind of wanting to go there for the low hanging fruit. But if you want to go even further and say, well, let's go to Elite Eight, where's Michigan State at in that? Well, they're sitting at plus 600. So that's a pretty massive jump. And then the entire region, Michigan State is chilling at plus 1500 to win the East region. that's going to be a bet for me. Just as a precursor for the futures video, that will be one of them. So, yeah, I think we're aligned there. And what a fun little region there. But let's keep on transitioning here. And now, as we kind of advance over to the Midwest Regional, this is a fun region, Nick. I think as far as the region I'm most excited to watch, maybe not necessarily the region I think a champion emerges from, but just from an individual round by round standpoint, I think this is by far my favorite region. And we kick it off with the 1 seed Houston going up against a 16 seed in Northern Kentucky that, listen, the Horizon I think is shit on as far as a mid major in terms of seeding, and that's unfortunate because Northern Kentucky is a pretty darn decent team. And who do you think advances out of this one to the second round here?
Yeah, I agree. I think the Horizon is probably to a casual fan. They don't even know that that league exists and they don't know any of those teams. But obviously, people like us watch probably more of the Horizon League than we probably should. But that region is super fun. I think a lot of those teams are good, whether their record is good or not. Like Detroit, for example, great guards on that team, good team, but they just aren't a good team record wise. But yeah, they get to this. I think Northern Kentucky, awesome team. We watched them in that tournament. They looked good. Their offense is really good. But I think when you run into Houston, none of that stuff really matters. Houston has been one of the best teams in the country for the past couple of years, and they prove it year in and year out. They had a bad game against Memphis in the AAC championship game, obviously without Marcus Sasser. Which who knows if it would have even mattered the way Kendrick Davis was playing for Memphis, but definitely plays a factor long term. So I think even without him, I don't know his status. So if you do, you can fill me in, but I don't think it matters for this game. I think Houston's going to win this one.
Yeah, I've been tracking his status just as a potential bet spot. I mean, a lot of these ones do not cover their spreads, and although they're oftentimes picked by the public to cover, and I think Marcus Sasser is a big one for this game because Northern Kentucky doesn't really have a lot of the guards that you'd want to see from one of these potential upset mid majors, right? But yeah, right now the status is that Houston is shutting their mouth because they don't have to talk about it, and they're just kind of letting it ride. It's very ambiguous, and I don't know, that injury to me looked very odd, and I wouldn't be surprised if he misses this game, maybe even in the next game as well. But I am going to take Houston there. But I think as far as an actual straight bet, Northern Kentucky might be a play, especially if Marcus Sasser isn't playing in that game. So give me Houston, but interesting spot there for sure. As we kind of go down to the 8-9 matchup between Iowa and Auburn, obviously, I'm rocking my Iowa apparel. I'm an Iowa fan. You went to the University of Iowa. I think they lose here. I'm gonna lead. I'm gonna take the onus and lead off with this one, Nick. I usually pass it to you.
Damn.
I
No fade.
I don't know how I'm sitting here decked out in Iowa gear, and I'm just like,
Damn.
yeah, they're losing this game. But
Yeah, what the hell?
I lost faith down the stretch this season, especially on neutral courts and especially on the road, where this team at some points was shooting 360th in the entire country in terms of 3-point percentage. And this was well into the second half of the season that was a stat that was or a number that was part of their identity. Nick, but you tell me, are you more optimistic in my Hawkeyes than me? Am I just pessimistic as by nature? Like, what's going on there?
I think definitely more negative towards them than me. I think you definitely have a better understanding of the team for sure. I admittedly haven't paid too close attention to Iowa or Auburn in that same discussion. I've watched them play. I've bet on both of these teams throughout the season. This to me is a coin flip game. I think it's more of a 50-50 to me. I think Auburn again is one of those teams that we've seen be disappointing when it comes to March. We saw them last year when I had a future on them and they looked so hot. I placed it like weeks before the SEC tournament when they decided to stop playing basketball and look really bad. This year's team, obviously a good team, but I don't have faith. I don't have faith in either of these teams really to move on that deep. So to me, it's a super coin flip. I have Auburn advancing, but like wouldn't be shocked at all if Iowa gets a close win. I think it's going to be a close game. I think obviously it's an 8-9 game, but to me, it's a straight up coin flip. Like I could change this again 30 times before tip.
Yeah, and maybe I can be talking to a coin flip here. There's no chance I bet on Iowa. There's obviously no chance I bet on Auburn against my boys, but I think Iowa against a heavy defensive team like Auburn, who can really make life hell, and especially down low, where Iowa has been leaning on Philip Racha so much this year. I just don't see a lot of success for Iowa in this game offensively, and that's their entire identity. Unless they pull a miracle out of their ass for defensive performance. So I'm going to take Auburn to advance there personally. And as we go down to this 5-12 matchup, all right, here we go. So we have Miami going up against Drake. Drake is one of my favorite mid majors, not only this year, not just from this team's perspective, but they are one of the most well run programs in college basketball year after year. The MVC should be a multi bid league, in my opinion. They have too much talent in that league to just say, oh, you know what? Well, whoever wins the conference is the only one getting in. I think Drake, on if they were given a chance to play in the Big Ten, would be a 7, would be an 8 seed year after year. But who do you think advances out of this 5-12 matchup here?
This one, it's hard because I agree with you. Like Drake is a really good team. The conference again, like I would have loved to see Indiana State, if they could have gotten
Yeah.
that win and get in. Obviously, I don't think they deserved it, seeing as it played out. But that conference is full of good teams. Like Bradley is a staple in that conference. Drake, Indiana State this year was very good. But I've been high on Miami. Obviously, when they're playing Duke, I'm going to shit on them. But I think this team is good. I think these guards are really good. I think this is going to be a good game. But I'm gonna back the Canes and I'm going to have them advancing. I think maybe I'm too high on Miami. Seeing other people talk about and talk about them in the ACC and everything. But I really like Miami, so I'm going to go with the Canes.
Yeah, and I think Miami is one of these teams that maybe I'm undervaluing and have been all season long because they do have the guards that if they are firing, on all cylinders, they could run Drake off the floor by double digits, and it wouldn't surprise me. But with no Norchad Amir, well, actually, I should preface this: he's questionable. I think he probably ends up playing, or at least in a
Yeah,
limited capacity. But right now, it's up in the air whether Norchad Amir plays. I think that's a major blow. I think he's sort of the glue guy, the backbone of that team.
100%.
But even if he does play, I think Drake, again, this is a matchup that I would more view as a 5 seeded team versus 7 seed. And when you're looking at it through that lens and you're looking at the line, the way it opened up, and again, 12-5 upsets are the most common upset in the tournament every single year. That and 11-6. I'm going to go with Drake, and I'm pretty damn confident in them to advance the second round there as well. Again, maybe it's just my some sort of bias in the back of my brain against Miami. I did love them last year, but I'm not backing them this year. I don't think they have 2 runs back to back years in them. So I'm going to take Drake to advance the second round there. And then as we go down to this 4-13, oh boy. This is probably out of all the first round matchups outside of just watching Iowa as a fan. This is the one I'm most excited about. Kent State going up against Indiana. Oh, give me this game on repeat for years. Who do you have advancing to the second round out of this one here?
Yeah, I think we're going to be on the same side as unfortunately, I think everybody is on this side.
Yeah.
I like the Golden Flashes to win this game. They're obviously going to be a dog in the game too, so I will have money on them. But I like them advancing. I mean, they're a really good team. Their defense is really good. They can score the ball. And Indiana isn't a team that I'm super high on. I think like a lot of the Big Ten teams, I'm not very high on. Just this year alone. So I'll take Kent State. The only thing that scares me, which normally I don't care about, but like everybody is on Kent State to get this win. So maybe Indiana's going to hear that and they're going to be like, what the fuck, and like get up and beat the brakes off Kent State. But I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. That's it scares me how many people are on Kent State. Listen, I think Kent State right now is a top 20 team in the entire country. I legitimately believe that. I understand maybe that if you are just kind of jumping to college basketball late in the season and you're not familiar with who their players are, that might seem like the hottest of hot takes. I mean, we're talking about a 13 seed here, but Kent State has the guards that will carry you to March, potentially even the best guard duo or trio in the entire tournament. Seriously, I mean, this team is loaded with scoring talent, and unfortunately, I think they're not sneaking up on Indiana. Definitely not. I think Indiana's looking at that like, damn, everybody is taking Kent State, but I have to ride with the public on this one because I love this Kent State team too much, and again, Indiana has one of those kind of fadeable molds. I think if Xavier Johnson was healthy, this is potentially a different game, but he's not. So I'm going to take Kent State to advance the second round there as well. And as we work down to this next matchup, so we have a playing game at the 11 seed line going up against Iowa State. Out of that playing spot of Mississippi State going up against Pittsburgh, who do you have advancing out of that one there?
Again, this is a tough one. I think Pitt is one of those teams that maybe didn't deserve to be here, and maybe over Clemson or something like that. But that game is going to be hard for me because I honestly don't know. I don't know if it matters in terms of who I have winning this round. So I'll take Pitt to win over Mississippi State, but I'm going to take Iowa State over Pitt in that first round of the actual tournament.
Yeah, and this is kind of where it gets interesting for me because man, I know we have a mutual I guess friend or somebody that we interact with, Moneyline Mac over at
Mm-hmm.
SGPN or the College
Yep.
Basketball Experience. Awesome guy. Was a video coordinator over at West Virginia, and he's adamant that Pitt is just awful. And I listen, there's definitely some bias there, folks. But let me tell you, I think this Pitt team is not only going to pull off a win in that playing game. I think they beat Iowa State. I liked how Iowa State finished against Baylor specifically to end the year, but that team feels like a mess. Whether it's Caleb Grill, whether their scoring droughts, their performance on the road, to end the season outside of that Baylor matchup. I think whoever comes out of that, or actually, I'm going to preface this. I think if Pittsburgh comes out of that 11 playing game, they beat Iowa State. If it is Mississippi State, I am going to make the caveat that I think Iowa State plays a very similar style to Mississippi State and is more experienced and better coached. So give me Iowa State in that one. But at Pittsburgh, I think is who ends up in that second round of my bracket there. And then as we go down to this 3-14 matchup, oh man. Tell me, Nick, how are we feeling about the Owls here going up against Xavier, Kennesaw State, that is?
Yeah, hot team. Kennesaw State really ended the year very well. Excited for them to be in here. But I think they're running into a kind of a wagon from the Big East and Xavier. I think I honestly I don't know what betting wise what the spread is even on this. I'm gonna take Xavier straight up, but I really wouldn't be shocked to see Kennesaw State make a game out of it and kind of show everyone who they are and why they're here. But in terms of the bracket, I'll have Xavier moving on.
Yeah, this is one game where I have a bet on it as far as Kennesaw State money line and also at plus 11 and a half.
Okay.
And do I think the logical outcome for a bracket purpose of just taking them outright is the smartest thing? No, but I also am looking at my bracket and I'm seeing, well, I have a 13 upset, I have a 12 upset. There is going to be a 14 or 15 upset somewhere in this field. And I don't know where it's at. I'm going to take a stab and say it's with Kennesaw State Owls. I think they finished so hot. I think they were battle tested in the Sun, which I think was one of the best mid-major conferences this season for sure. I really love Kennesaw State to take down Xavier here. Xavier's been kind of skating by on thin depth a lot of the second half this season, and they just made it to the championship game. There's parts of it that make me feel like maybe they're gonna hit tired legs at some point, or if they are down late, maybe they start relying on jump shots. I mean, they're under a first year, or obviously Miller isn't a first year head coach, but he's first year at the program. I think maybe, and obviously Zach Freemantle is not going to be playing this game either. I think there's a lot of things going against Xavier that although they're a good team and although they have a lot of good wins, I think Kennesaw State has the ability to pick them off here. So I'm going to take Kennesaw State to advance to the second round in my bracket here. And then as we go down to this 7-10 matchup with Texas A&M going up against Penn State, I think this is one of my more just fun games to look at from the outside looking in. But who do you have advancing to the second round here?
Yeah, this is a tough game. This is going to be a
Yeah.
good game
Oh
because
yeah.
A&M second best team in the SEC, regular season and championship game. But they're going up against a Penn State team who almost made the run in
Yeah.
the Big Ten and are very hot. Pickett, obviously awesome for Penn State. But A&M is also a really good team. Yeah, this is definitely a game you're going to want to watch. But I'm going to have A&M edging out Penn State. I think it's going to be a real close game, going to be a real good game. But I'll give it to A&M to get the win.
Yeah. I feel like this is the true coin flip. And again, if you like guards, you want to tune into this game. And if you also like being the person that says, I want to do an overtime bet overtime in this game. This feels like two teams who never really quit. This is two teams who make their free throws. Um, could be very, very interesting. And I have to go with Jalen Pickett, Seth Lundy, and Cameron Winter. I think that's a healthy guard trio to have going into a tournament game like this. Again, I could see this going either way, and I think there's a potential run out of this spot, but I'm going to go with Penn State to advance to my second round there. And as we go down to that 215 matchup, so we have Colgate, who a lot of public people know just because it's named after a toothpaste company, and they're going up against Texas. I'm seeing a lot of people, as far as their St. Peter's this year being Colgate. Tell me, Nick, are they onto something, or is this a stomp spot for Texas?
No, I don't think like it's that St. Peter's, like, again, awesome. And it's so fun to watch a team like for people like us, obviously casuals probably hate it because they're like, who the hell are these guys? But it's awesome to see a 15 seed do that because it's not done. Like it doesn't happen because they play a team like Texas out the gate and just get crushed. Now, I don't think Colgate's gonna get like buried by like 30 points that we normally see in a 215. I do think Texas is going to win the game by double digits. Will Colgate keep it within, 12, 13? Possibly. Their offense is good. I haven't watched too much of them this year, but again, they're another staple of March Madness. Like they're all, I can't remember a time that Colgate hasn't been in the tournament, at least in recent years. But no, Texas is a wagon of a team. Like we saw them in their last two matchups versus Kansas, just like bury them. And that's something that you don't just like do. It's not a fluke, you know what I mean? Like Kansas is an awesome team, and Texas, again, I thought this team was going to implode with the Chris Beard situation. I
Yep.
really, really didn't think they were going to do anything after you lose your head coach and one of Chris Beard, obviously off the court, bad guy, but as a basketball coach, he's a very good coach.
Yes.
So when you lose someone like that, it's hard for me to be like, oh yeah, like they're still going to make the tournament and make a deep run. But I mean, I was proven very wrong. I think Texas gets it done. I think we're going to see Texas in a couple weeks. They're gonna be around for a little bit.
Absolutely agree. I think this is a game that we see 88-68. Like something that's a 20-point blowout, I think is on our hands here.
Yeah.
And this Texas team, yeah, they've had maybe not the most sparkling reputation in this NCAA tournament over the years. They've been picked off several times. They've also had just some unfortunate moments in Northern Iowa, that buzzer beater, Seth Jesperson, Abilene Christian. I'm sure I'm missing some other ones as well, but
That was
yeah,
sad that year.
very.
50% free throw shooter just drills them.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, I'm going Texas with you. I don't think it's relatively close in that one. But let's move up here to the top of the bracket, second round, where we have Houston taking on. Do we both have Auburn? Is that correct?
Yeah.
So in that Houston Auburn matchup, I think we're. This is so. We saw this game already transpire. It was a very fun game. It was at Auburn. Houston won it, but as far as this matchup in a tournament setting goes, how do you see this playing out here?
Yeah. Again, it's just really hard for me to put a lot of confidence behind Auburn this year. I think I just lean more with Houston to show up to the game and get the job done more than any of these teams in the first two rounds. So I'm going to go with Houston. I think it's definitely going to be a closer game, like single digit game for sure. But I think Houston gets it by 5, 6 points. So yeah, I'll go with the Cougs.
Yeah, I'm going to begrudgingly take Houston as well, but I do think Auburn again has the guard play and the volatility out of uh, just a lot of different players on that roster to make this a ball game potentially, especially if we don't know the status of Marcus Sasser by this point as well. I think if my caveat would be if Marcus Sasser's not playing in this game and that's all of a sudden ends up being confirmed, I'm taking Auburn. I think it's going to be that tight. So if they're going to give me say 6.5 points on a spread, just as a precursor to maybe like straight bets for the second round, I will confidently take Auburn at the spread point and on the money line there. I think Houston absolutely needs Marcus Sasser. Otherwise, I think they're the quality of a three or four seed rather than a solidified one seed in my opinion. Um, as we go down to this next matchup here, so we have a little bit of a different one. We both have Kent State in there, but you have them taking on Miami, and I have them taking on Drake. As far as your matchup between Miami and Kent State goes, who are you seeing advancing out of that one there?
Again, I'm gonna back my boy Isaiah Wong and go with Miami. I'm hoping I I hope Miami makes it far. I do like Jim Larinaga as a coach. I think he's a great coach in the ACC, great coach overall. And I trust their guards to at least get them this far in the tournament. I don't know how much farther they'll get after this, but I see them making a Sweet 16 run.
Yeah, and what I will say is I love Larry Noriega. I mean, or why am I butchering his name? But Miami is a team that if they made a run, I wouldn't be surprised one bit. I again, they have the volatility at their guard position that if they catch fire, they can literally beat any team in the entire country. I don't think that's a too far fetched idea. That said, because I do have a matchup of Kent State Drake here, I think we're looking at one of the more fun games of the tournament for
Yes.
the deep divers, right? The people who have been watching this team, all these both these teams all season long. I'm going to take Kent State again. I'm going to stick by my belief that this is a top 20 team in the country with the guards necessary to make a good run. So give me Kent State to advance to the Sweet 16 there. And then as we look at that next second round matchup, so we both have, well, so you have Iowa State taking on, Xavier,
Mhm.
and I have Pittsburgh going up against Kennesaw State. That was my ballsy play, the 14 seed advancing there. But as far as your Iowa State Xavier matchup goes, who are you liking to advance the Sweet 16 there?
I'm gonna go with Xavier again. This Iowa State team, I feel like I back them or bet against them in March a lot whenever they're here. Like I feel like a couple of years ago I took them against LSU when LSU was going through that Will Wade stuff when they didn't have them. So I was like, oh, Iowa State gets this done, and then they got dusted by LSU. So I feel like I'm on the wrong side of Iowa State every March. So wouldn't be surprised if they take out Xavier, but I'll go with Xavier to advance. I just don't trust Iowa State, this team with the volatility that they have to get this far. So give me Xavier.
Yep, and I think in that matchup, if that's what it ends up being, I would also take Xavier. Given that I have Pittsburgh going up against Kennesaw State, again, sorry, Moneyline Mac, but I am taking Pittsburgh to advance to Sweet 16. Oof, that sounded disgusting coming out of my mouth. But I do think, I do think more often than not, when you do see a 14 or a 15 seed pull an upset, they don't go on a run like a St. Peter's did. That was kind of remarkable, right? That's like reserved for the Florida Gulf Coast of the world. The obviously St. Peter's, but a lot of
Mhm.
these other teams that we've seen coming out of the 14, 15 spot just really don't end up going on a lot of runs. And I do think they would end up getting shut down immediately in that second round by whoever it is, whether it's Iowa State, Mississippi State, or Pittsburgh. I think they would lose that matchup. So that's who I'm advancing. I'm going to take Pittsburgh to the Sweet 16. And then as we go down to that next matchup, we both take Penn State there?
You know,
Okay, so you have Texas A&M going up against Texas. Ooh,
what
that's
a
a television
rivalry.
rating one. Oh man, the stories do write themselves. Gosh, you might be right about that matchup there. I'm going to keep my Penn State pick, but I think you're onto something. As far as your Texas A&M Texas matchup, who do you have advancing to the Sweet 16 there?
Yeah, I again though with the Penn State, I wouldn't like that game to me is also a coin flip. So while this is definitely what the SEC and Big 12 fans want to see and what the nation wants to
Well,
see.
just the SEC. I mean, in
Oh
a couple
yeah,
years, this is
yeah,
an SEC
right.
matchup.
Right. In 2024, this is an SEC rivalry, which I can't believe they don't even play each other anymore, like in football, but
Insane.
whatever. For this game, God, it's just hard for me to see Texas go out in the second round. I think this team is just so talented, offensively, defensively. And this, like we said before, this coach, they're in. Like this guy is gonna get the job, I imagine. He's gonna lead them to at least the second weekend. I can't if Texas doesn't make it to the second weekend, it's going to be a very disappointing year, especially if they lose to A&M. They're not going to be happy about that. So I'm going to take the Longhorns. I think they, at bare minimum, get to the second weekend.
Yep. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think Texas ends up winning this matchup. Whoever comes out of that Penn State A&M matchup. Um, but yeah, as far as my Texas Penn State game goes, I think Texas would win this game by eight or so. I would say is probably kind of the range, like a 76-68 type game. So give me Texas to advance on whoever they play there. But as we go up to the top of the Sweet 16 here, so we have drastically different ones here. Again, you're gonna have to help me out. So
I gotcha.
perfect. So is it Houston, Miami that you have up there?
Correct.
Perfect. So out of that Houston Miami matchup, who do you see advancing to the Elite Eight?
This is where we really need to see the status of Sasser in my mind, because if he's not playing in this game, I think Miami is definitely it's gonna be Miami's game to lose, in my opinion. Obviously Houston's a wagon, and it's scary going up against them and scary betting against them. Even as big favorites as they are all season, they just tend to cover their games and win their games. Obviously, only dropping two this year, one I think being a fluke, and then one to the best team in the country. But man, I really want to see Miami advance. I think if Sasser plays, I go Houston, which obviously we don't know. So I'm going to take Miami. I'm going to have Miami advance. Obviously, betting wise, that's where that injury comes into play. But I'm going to take Miami to upset Houston and move on to the Elite Eight.
Yeah, I think if we know that Norchad Amir is playing in this game and Marcus Sasser
Yeah,
isn't, again, I think if that's the case, I think Houston gets picked off by whoever plays them in round two, and that's coming from an Iowa fan. A little bit biased maybe on there, but I did pick against them in round one, so maybe not biased at all. But I do think Houston is pickable, or you can pick him off if he is not in their lineup. And yeah, again, Miami, I've been saying it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they go on a run, even though I have them going out in round one. I just think they had a tough draw in round one, and sometimes you just kind of have to play that board like that. As far as my matchup goes here between Kent State and I have Houston advancing, but again, caveat that I might have Auburn there as well. I am going to take Houston to advance past Kent State. I again, if this ends up being a Kent State Auburn matchup, Kent State is winning that thing, baby. I'm telling you right now, I would take an Elite Eight feature on Kent State for sure in this region, just a little sprinkle. And but yeah, as far as that one goes, if that's the matchup and Marcus Sasser is healthy, I think Houston's a little bit too much for Kent State there. Even though we saw this game again, this is another game we saw earlier on in the year, and Kent State showed up to play. I'm gonna take Houston, or yeah, Houston for example on this one. But as we go down to the second Sweet 16 matchup, we both have Texas in there, and then a little bit different. So I have Pittsburgh going up against Texas, and you have Xavier going up against Texas.
yeah.
Tell me, who do you think advances out of that Xavier Texas matchup?
This this is where Xavier falters, and I think Texas gets it done. I think this team is built really to make a deep run and potentially even farther than this. But it hurts to doubt this Texas team, watching them all year and seeing how good they are. Like I really believe in them this year. I don't think there's I think Texas A&M is going to be the challenge for them. I think if they get past it, then they get to the Elite Eight to play whoever comes out of the top side of the bracket. I think really that's their only challenge. So I think if they get past A&M, that they have a cruise to play Houston or Miami.
Yeah, and I think regardless of what this Elite Eight ends up being, I think personally for me, and we have the same one as far as Houston or excuse me, Sweet 16 right now. But as far as whoever kind of plays Texas in that Sweet 16 game, I think they're going to lose. I also just gave a little bit of foreshadowing accidentally for the Elite Eight, but yeah, I'm taking Texas to advance out of the Sweet 16 there, regardless of who they're playing. I have Pitt. I don't think it matters. I think Texas is that good. Um, as we go to our Elite Eight matchup, we have the same one. We have Houston going up against Texas. Tell me, who do you think advances out of this battle of the Texas here?
Yeah, so I had Miami advancing
Oh yeah,
past
you have
Houston.
Miami.
So I'm
Yep.
gonna this is but again, yeah, like that matchup too. It's I don't know. It's so tough because it's a little bit of emotional to just wanting Miami to be good, but I just Texas is just really gonna be a hard team to get past. I'm gonna give it to the Longhorns to advance over Miami. It's going to be a great game. I hope Norchad gets healthy and can play. That way they're at full strength. So there's no excuses, none of that.
Mm-hmm.
I hope all of these guys who are currently injured for every team just gets healthy if they can and they're at full strength or at least as good as they can be. So I think even with Norchad in, I think Texas gets past them.
I think this would be a fun one, not only just for the TV ratings, again, because people would eat this game up, but like a Texas Miami matchup. I can't remember if they've ever played in the past decade against each other in college basketball. I really don't remember if they did.
Yeah, I can't
Um,
remember either.
yeah, so I mean, that would just be a fun one as far as two blue bloods that you would think have played at one point, just not playing in recent memory. As far as my matchup goes between Texas and Houston, I am going to take Texas. I think as far as the better team and the 1 and 2 seed marks, I think Texas is just the outright better team than Houston. There's been some several times this year where Houston's kind of looked a little bit lackadaisical. Maybe it's just because they are playing, like in East Carolina on a given night, or Tulsa, or one of these kind of bottom feeding American AAC teams. But I think Texas has the ability to score, to play defense, and I think they have the depth. And I think they win that game, and I think they advance to the Final Four no matter what out of this bracket. So as we kind of look at our future potential odds, or like something that might have value as far as a region winner for Texas, who we both just took. Um, let's take a look here. Scroll down. They're plus 300, so they are second, right behind Houston. They go chalk here. And what's kind of interesting about this bracket is that when you do look at the odds to win the region, we have Houston at plus 160, you have Texas at plus 300, and then there is a massive drop. The next team is Xavier plus 700. I mean, that tells you all you need to know about who's spearheading this side of the bracket. And I think when you're looking at those numbers, you also kind of go factor in like, all right, so as far as Houston and Texas goes, who can be picked off easiest? And when you look at Houston has on draws. When you look at the Marcus Sasser injury, when you look at just kind of maybe some unimpressive performances down the stretch, I think they are the more likely candidate to get picked off, which means you open the door for a Texas or an Auburn future or a Miami future, somebody to kind of sneak out of that and advance to the Final Four there. So I would definitely look at that as in terms of value for sure. All right, Nick, we're down to the final region here. We got the West Regional, and very interesting region. Let's start at the very top here. We have Kansas going up against Howard in the 116 spot. Obviously, I think we're both going Kansas, but do you see a ball game here potentially?
Probably not. I think this is the biggest spread of the tournament. I think it's sitting at like 21. So maybe they'll keep it within 20, but in terms of yeah, a close game for just a money line, no shot. I think Howard's doomed.
Yeah, this isn't even one I would touch the first half spread for Howard. I might touch it for Kansas. This is this screams a 30-point win for Kansas, in my opinion. Every single year, there's like a 58 to 100 type game. I think this could be potentially that game here. So yeah, Kansas advances to second round. I think that's going to be pretty chalk across all brackets. And then as we go down to Arkansas, Illinois, we have a game here, I think,
Oh yeah.
and we might have differing opinions. I'm not sure. So tell me, who do you think advances to the second round out of that spot there?
Yeah, and this is such a these 8-9 games this year. I feel like are I mean they're always
Crazy
close,
good.
but these ones are like really good.
Yeah.
it's so hard because I want to trust the Must Bus and that team because I really love Musselman. I think he is a really good coach, and I think those players really buy into him. Because and maybe it's just because he has a personality and he's not like these coaches that we don't really hear from. We just see him coach, and that's their personality, just being a good coach. Like Musselman is it's fun to watch. Um, I have Arkansas moving on over Illinois. Maybe you can sway me if your Big Ten team, if you lean that way. I could see this pick getting swapped again 30 times, like we've talked about with some other picks. But as of right now, I have the Razorbacks.
Yeah, a few things here. So what scares me about Arkansas is we've seen several games this year, even with Nick Smith in the lineup, where they have gone on, no joke, 10-minute scoring droughts. That doesn't happen to most teams multiple times in a year. It's happened to them 4 times. So what scares me about Arkansas is their ability to score. I think the last time out, their last impression against Texas A&M is a great example. They were in firm control of that game. They were up double digits, and then it just the brakes fell off, and they almost, I think they might have lost by double digits in that game in regulation. Illinois, whenever there's a team entering into tournament play with something to prove, that's getting shit talked as a program, and I feel like you have to side with it. I mean, usually the public and the opinion of the public is just something you want to fade, right? And then everybody right now is just talking so much crap about this program. Have been all year, ever since Sky Clark left the program, and I can't remember the other player's name that left the program at the same time after the Northwestern loss. They they started playing a lot better, and they obviously have a lot of neutral court wins this year that I think are pretty darn impressive. I'm taking Illinois with confidence here to advance this second round. I do like Must Bus, and I want to trust Arkansas, but I think Illinois has something to prove in this game for sure. I don't know if that swayed you, but are you sticking with your Arkansas point?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like they definitely have something to prove because everyone is down on them with those guys leaving the program, and I'm pretty sure like Brad Underwood might have gotten cursed from someone from Penn State's program or something because they swept them 3 games this year.
Mhm.
So, I mean, again, Illinois is a good team. Underwood's a great coach. It's just such a coin flip for me. I think for now I'll stick with Arkansas. But
Fair.
again, we got what a day and a half, 2 days for me to switch, which it's definitely going to happen. So we'll see come talk. But for the purpose of right now, we'll go with Arkansas.
Perfect. And as we go down this 5-12, all right. Again, committee just wants to see these mid majors fail. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they were like, all right, only one of you can advance the second round. We don't need both of you having 2 different games against high major opponents because guess what? St. Mary's and VCU would beat those high majors, no matter what. So in this matchup, we have St. Mary's going up against VCU, obviously a 5-12.
Yep.
Who are you seeing advance the second round out of this matchup here?
This is another one where is the public going to be right on this one because everybody is on VCU to knock off St. Mary's. It, this is for me. I've watched St. Mary's. They're a really good team. We obviously had the show talking about the West Coast Conference. I'm gonna go with St. Mary's. I'm gonna fade the public. I think St. Mary's is well equipped to handle VCU coming out of the A10.
Mm.
I usually am really low on the West Coast teams because I think that conference is whack and they play whack teams and they don't get tested. But I think we've seen St. Mary's over the last couple of years prove that they are a team that is capable of hanging with higher level of competition than VCU. So I'll take St. Mary's to knock them off.
Yeah, and this feels like a true coin flip, which is why I do have a bet on VCU, just because we're getting 3.5 points. I mean, we're getting over
Right.
a possession with them. So
Yeah.
I feel like in a coin flip type game, when you do have a guy like Ace Baldwin, you have the backdoor potential because he's not going to quit. And then you also have the outright win potential. Um, I am going to go VCU. I do still like them to advance here. I think, again, this is a team that if they would have avoided injuries this year, we're looking at a 30-4 team, and they're not just getting in because they won the A10 championship game. They're getting in as an at large at the 8-9 spot. Um, so I'm kind of looking at it through that lens as well. And I do think St. Mary's is also underseeded as well potentially. But I am going to take VCU to advance there out of that 12-4 spot. And then as we go down to that next one between UConn and Iona, again, this is a fun one because not only do you have Iona and Rick Pitino, um, Iona missed the tournament last year. I feel like, and there's still a lot of carryover experience that from that team that missed out and didn't get to play Experience March to the full of effect. And then you have Hurley on UConn, who in non-con play to open up the year, they were the best team in the country, it looked like. And then they hit a big skid and started Big East play. And over the course, ever since the start of conference play, they have looked really volatile half to half. I mean, they've given up some major leads. Who do you see advancing out of this 13-4 matchup here?
Yeah, I again, this is one of those guys with Patino where off the court, weird guy, maybe not agree with everything, but on the court, I mean, a legend coach, right? Like
Yep.
he's if you think college basketball, he's one of those guys, maybe not the first three, but he's one of those guys that is like I would want him to coach my team.
Yep.
I think UConn. I'm so bad with the Big East. Like I feel like an idiot whenever they play because I just can't get it right. I'm gonna go with UConn. I think this team is maybe wagon's the wrong word, but they're a good team, and I don't want to get in the way of them. So even though Iona is a great team, and again they have with Pitino, they've kind of become a staple to be in here. I think they've made it the last couple of years. Or at least a couple out of the last, they're here every once in a while. And I like watching them play, but I'm gonna go with UConn.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that angle. I think if UConn is playing right, they can really beat anybody in the country. I think they're that good. What I will say is Hurley, I don't like him as a coach. I mean,
I agree.
I think he's assembled a good recruiting talent base just from his, what he wants in a mold, how he sees his team projecting on the floor. But then he has a weird rotations which don't really make sense to me. Again, they don't play two good halves of basketball usually. They have blown a lot of big leads, and I think Rick Pitino is the best coach out there, and I think he has just an edge in terms of keeping this game close. So I'm going to take a stab here again with Iona, 13 seed. I have a lot of 13s and 14s. I don't have a lot of them making runs just because I think that, when they do kind of pull off a major upset like this, their longevity after an emotional win like that isn't great. But I do like Iona to advance past UConn here. Almost pretty confident. I have a bet on it, but I'm also pretty confident as well in that playing out there. And then as we go down to the second round, so we have, or continue down the second round rather, we have TCU going up against a playing game in that 11 spot between Arizona State and Nevada. Interesting who comes out of that playing game. How do you see that playing game playing out?
I mean, talk about a coin flip game. Arizona State is a weird team. We've seen them win games that they shouldn't. We've seen them lose games that they shouldn't. So they give off a weird vibe to me. I think they'll edge out Nevada in that playing game to play TCU, which I think would pose more of a threat to TCU than Nevada would. But I think in either winner, I'm going to take TCU to advance. I like Miles, obviously. They're having some weird things going on over at TCU.
Yeah.
Again, don't agree with if they're true. But I think this TCU team, regardless of Lampkin being there or not, I think they're equipped to take care of either of these teams that come out. So I'll take Arizona State to beat Nevada. I'll take TCU to beat either of them.
Yeah, man, I'm right there with you. I think, personally, I think Nevada ends up winning that playing game, but I think TCU, Jamie Dixon, Mike Miles, I think that's a good baseline just to avoid that dreaded 6-11 upset, which is so common nowadays. But I am going to take TCU on whoever advances at that playing game to win and go to the second round there. And then as we go down to this next matchup, so we have Gonzaga at the 3 seed line playing Grand Canyon. And like we kind of talked about in our WCC conference tournament breakdown, this is a weird year for Gonzaga because I think they are still insanely talented and they are flying so below the radar right now because of what happened in non-con play, I think, to be honest. And, what are your thoughts on how this matchup plays out? And if you do end up picking Gonzaga, do you think that, that's a stomping? How do you see that game kind of flowing there?
Yeah, again, I might be one of the biggest haters of Gonzaga because I just hate when everyone talks about them. I think a lot of people I've seen too, like say they're not going to lose a game the rest of the year after they beat St. Mary's and they're going to go on to win the whole thing. I don't think they're that good, but they're definitely well equipped to be here in the later weeks of March. I don't think this game is going to be close. I think Gonzaga is going to absolutely run away with it. And again, like you said, a 3 seed, like I mean, that's a low seed for them. I think it's right for this year. But again, like a 3 seed Gonzaga is not what one of those teams you want to see. So yeah, Gonzaga wins it. They win it easy. Yeah, the Grand Canyon ain't gonna upset them.
No chance, in my opinion. I think Gonzaga can win this game by however many points they want to, and eventually they'll call off the dog to save it for the next round. But yeah, I don't think this is relatively close. So don't pick that as an upset, in my opinion, if you're wanting to take one of these 14 seeds. Um, as we scroll down here to this Northwestern Boise State game, opens up at a pick 'em. The line has flipped to Northwestern side. Who are you liking to advance the second round here now?
Wow, Northwestern's a favorite now.
Yeah, they're -1.5 on a lot of different
Okay.
books, and they lost their plus money allure for sure.
Yeah, that's honestly, I think that's better in my case. I think Boise State is equipped to take down Northwestern. I think obviously Boo Buie is a wagon. He's awesome. Northwestern has been good this year. I think maybe a little bit surprisingly, at least for me, someone that didn't know, I don't know too much about Northwestern as a program.
Mhm.
But watching them play this year, I mean, they're very good. But I've seen a lot of Boise State this year, which is weird to say considering Northwestern's a Power Five team. But I've watched a ton of Mountain West games. Max Rice on Boise State is really good. Degenhart down low is definitely capable of putting up points and getting the boards that they're going to need. Um, so I have them upsetting Northwestern to move on, and I'll probably also be putting money on them to win that game outright as well.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a lot of fair points, and I do think Boise State is again. I think they were trying to get one of these teams out. No, none of them are a TV ratings kind of team, and Northwestern was so close to winning the Big Ten. They were the 2 seed in the Big Ten tournament, and this is their most talented team in years, and they're getting seeded at a 7 seed line, the same as Michigan State. Just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me. And
Right.
listen, I think this is a year, again, kind of leaning on that Illinois angle of the Big Ten is getting shit talked to all hell. I mean, everybody's fading them. They're calling them the Little Ten. I think there are going to be some teams like Iowa and in Indiana that do not advance, but I'm taking Northwestern here. I think they have the two best players on the floor in Boo Buie and Chase Audige, and that's no disrespect to Marcus Shaver Jr. I think he's a hell of a player, but that's just kind of where my take is. And then when you look at Northwestern and how their team is molded, they have four really good guards. They have five players who play over 23 minutes that are shooting over 80% from the free throw line. So if you're talking about icing a game, if you're say up 3 points with 30 seconds left to go, this is a team that can formulate five guys on the floor that are going to be just hitting every single free throw and just being annoying as far as not being able to go die easy. And I do think they are a volatile scoring team, which is the biggest concern, I think, with Northwestern. But if Chase Audige, if you can get the right version of him on that game, this could be a convincing win. So I'm going to take Northwestern to advance that second round there. And then as we go down to UCLA, UNC Asheville, the 215, UCLA is very banged up. And what's funny is I'm seeing a lot of people. This is the St. Peter's pick for a lot of people as well. So we talked about Colgate being a popular 15. If they're not going Colgate, I've been seeing a lot of UNC Asheville. Give me your thoughts on the matchup here, and then also if you do take UCLA, how do you see the game playing out as well?
Yeah, I if you were forcing me to take a 15 seed to upset a 2 seed, looking at the bracket, I think this would be no, I would take Princeton still. But definitely I like this more than Colgate. I think UCLA, like you said, banged up. That's gonna play a factor at some point this March. I don't think it plays a factor here. So I have UCLA to advance. I do think that Asheville keeps it fairly close, and probably maybe 12 points, a couple possessions game there. I think the spread is probably around that. I think it's high, like 18 maybe or so. I
Mhm.
think I would take the points with them, but UCLA to advance.
Yeah, and I will say this line opened at 18 and a half, and it's dropped now down to 17 and 17 and a half across the board. So
Mhm.
obviously there's some kind of love being shown Asheville's way there, but yeah, I am taking UCLA, and I also think this is a stomp spot for UCLA. I think even with their injuries, they have the guards, they have the experience, they have the balance to really make a run at this thing. So I am going to take UCLA as well. And then as we go up to the top of the side of the second round, at the very top of this bracket, rather, we are looking at Kansas going up against, for you, Arkansas, for me, Illinois. Who do you see advancing out of that Arkansas Kansas game? Another good game.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna go with the Jayhawks. I think again, blue blood team. They're gonna get deep in this thing. They're a very good team, number one seed. Once again, I'm sure they've been number one seed a million times. But yeah, I think Arkansas has had a bit of a rough year, especially when facing better competition. They have just been struggling this year. So I think whoever comes out of that 8-9 seed, I'm going to take Kansas regardless. If I do flip that pick. Hopefully Phil Self is okay and he's going to be there. I think he's supposed to be here for the tournament run, so hopefully he is. That definitely would make me feel even more comfortable having Kansas go farther in March. But I think regardless that Kansas gets on to the next round.
Yeah, and what's interesting for me here in my Illinois Kansas matchup is that I do think Illinois can make this a ball game. I think they have the guards necessary to do it. I think they have the bigs to kind of match up down low as well, and potentially even present an issue for Kansas. Um, and we've seen years after year when a team does go on a run and wins national title and carries over the same roster. There's a lot of letdowns in there. I think this Kansas team is built different, to kind of use a popular phrase on the internet. But yeah, I think Kansas will advance past whoever comes out of that 8-9 game. But I think if it's Illinois, there's a game on our hands there, I think. Um, as we go down to this next matchup, so a little bit different here, drastically different here. So you have St. Mary's going up against UConn, fun
Yeah.
game. And I have VCU going up against Iona, which I also think is a fun game. Who do you think advances out of your matchup between St. Mary's and UConn?
Yours is more fun, but I think whoever is broadcasting that game might hate you. Yeah, so for mine, St. Mary's UConn, God, it's gonna be a good game.
Yep.
I have UConn moving on. But again, like you brought up, like Hurley, I don't trust him as a coach. I think we've seen some sus things from them. But I think the team is better than St. Mary's team. So I'm gonna trust in the players more than the coach for this one. So I'll go with UConn.
Yeah, and I'd say if that's a matchup there and UConn does avoid that, for initial first round upset, I think again, this is a UConn team that they're very volatile, but they can win some games in this tournament and make a potential run. So yeah, in that matchup, I would also take UConn because my matchup is VCU Iona. I'm taking VCU. Again, I think this team is more so seven seed talented than they are 12 seed. I think again they're underseeded because the committee just hates these mid majors and they just want to set them up to fail or at least get bounced, which is why we saw San Diego State going up against Charleston and we saw St. Mary's going up against VCU and we saw Memphis going up against FAU. Um, but yeah, I'm going to take VCU to advance to my Sweet 16 there. And then as our next matchup, we kind of take a look at it. We have the same one. And man, another great matchup. We have TCU going up against Gonzaga across the board there. Tell me, who do you think advances to the Sweet 16?
I hate it, but I gotta go with the I gotta go with the Bulldogs. I
Correct.
think Drew Timmy might have a field day with no Lampkin down low. As
Yep.
much as I hate him too, I just think this Bulldogs team got a got a pretty good draw being a 3 seed down here. So yeah, I got him beating TCU. It might be a game, but I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't a game either. And Gonzaga runs away with it. I think they really have these first two rounds for them are going to be kind of a cakewalk, I think.
I think Gonzaga steamrolls TCU. I think they're dealing with some dysfunction, clearly, in their program. I also think they're just the by far more talented team by far. And I don't use that as hyperbole or, I really do think Gonzaga is not only flying under the radar, they're one of the top 5 teams in this tournament. So give me Gonzaga to advance to Sweet 16 as well. And then as we head down to this next matchup, you have Boise State taking on UCLA, and I have Northwestern taking on UCLA. Who do you like coming out of that Boise State UCLA matchup?
Yeah, this is where the Broncos run comes to an end. I think they'll be happy with a first round win. I think the Mountain West, have they ever won a game or in the first round? I feel like there's a stat that I saw that they're 0-8 or something, but I feel like that's not enough games or it's just wrong. So
Over recent years, they haven't won a game in like 2 years or something.
okay, so yeah, I maybe I'm biased because I'm a degenerate and I watch them way too much. So when they tip off at 11 p.m. But regardless, I have UCLA beating Boise State. I think UCLA is still obviously the Jalen Clark injury is huge, and they're banged up all over. But I think that UCLA has been battle tested enough. They're equipped. They've been here before. They get past Boise State and the Broncos to move on.
Yeah, and I think this is a steamroll spot again for UCLA. Whoever
Yeah.
comes out of that 7-10, I think it's a double-digit win. I bet the line opens up at something like -8.5 regardless, and I would take it. So yeah, I'm taking UCLA as well there. And then as we go over to our Sweet 16, so now it's starting to get for real here. You have UConn going up against Kansas. I have Kansas going up against the VCU. Kansas VCU just feels like it should be a March game. But as far as UConn versus Kansas goes, tell me, who do you think advances to the Elite Eight out of that one there?
I'm I'm going with the champs. I'm going with Kansas. They're gonna move on. They're gonna play the winner of those West Coast boys on the other side of the bracket. I just think Kansas is they're just so good, man. We're gonna see them maybe in April, that first week in April. But yeah, I like Kansas. I don't think UConn, while they are a good team, this will be a good game. This will be the one that the stations want on. People are going to tune into this one for sure. But I think Kansas just edges them out. I think, of course, Bill Self is a way better coach than Hurley, and the players are really good. Grady Dick, obviously, is going to be raining threes from deep. This team is just equipped to make another run.
Yeah, this does feel like the reason why UConn has some value on making a run because if we do see Kansas get picked off by an Arkansas or Illinois, I think UConn beats whoever comes out of that game. Personally, I'm going to take Kansas over VCU as well for mine to advance to the Elite Eight there. I just think this Kansas team is built correctly for this type of tournament atmosphere. Um, as we go down this next one, so we both have Gonzaga and we both have UCLA. Tell me, this is going to be a classic, but tell me, who do you think advances to the Elite Eight there, the final or Elite Eight there?
Yeah, I really wish I could say UCLA is going to get their revenge when Jalen Suggs sent them packing with that bank shot in to send them home a couple years ago. But I think the injuries are just gonna be too much in this spot. I think this is where you're gonna wish you had Jalen Clark on the floor and everyone was at full strength because Gonzaga is they've been here before. They're gonna gun for the championship every year, especially as long as Timmy's on that team. Yeah, I just think UCLA, unfortunately, with the injuries and everything, that Gonzaga is going to be too much for them to handle.
Yeah, and I did misspeak. It is the Final Four. I don't know what I was talking about as far as advancing there, but
Oh, good.
listen, I think you said it correctly early on in this episode when we were talking about the stories kind of write themselves. Wouldn't it just be classic if the year that everybody counts out Gonzaga and they don't have the expectations, they win the whole damn thing? I
No, no,
mean,
it's too far, too far.
too far, too far. I know. It's that hit close to home. I am still taking Gonzaga to
Yeah.
advance to the Final Four there, regardless of who comes out of that top side. Love them there, really do. And then as we're looking at our Final Four here, so very, very interesting field. So you have bring me down your Final Four, just because there are so many different options here that we were picking from.
So I got the bad boys from Alabama moving out of the South. I got my Blue Devils coming out of the East. I have Texas coming out of the Midwest. And I'm going to go with Kansas coming out of the West. I think once Gonzaga runs into Kansas, is where they drop and make their exit out of the tourney. Again, it could be just a hater move, but that game is going to be good. But I think when you run into a fully equipped team with no injuries and you have one of the best coaches in college basketball on the other side, is where they falter. So that's what I got. I got Bama Duke on the left side of the bracket and Texas Kansas on the right side of the bracket.
All right. So, and as far as mine goes, I have Arizona taking on Michigan State for in the Final Four, and then I have Gonzaga going up against Houston, or excuse me, against Texas in mine on that side. So, tell me, Nick, in your first Final Four matchup coming from the South Regional and the East Regional, you have Duke, you have Alabama. Who wins that matchup?
Can you cut this if I'm just we'll dub it over if
Yeah,
Duke
redacted.
wins? Yeah. Emotionally Duke bracket Bama.
Okay. I was gonna
I
say, Nick, come on.
I'll be rooting for Duke. But no, if Bama makes it this far, I think they're gonna be crazy. They're just gonna be hot. Like if they're on this streak again, you're gonna run into a hot Alabama team. I don't wanna play Brandon Miller. Like
Yeah.
he's capable of putting up 40 points. We've seen it happen. Their defense is awesome. They can make it rain from three. They can score down low. I think that's where Duke gets their loss.
Yeah, and I will say, and I'll make a caveat. Obviously, I have Duke going out in the very first round. But if Duke does end up, taking on a not Alabama, not Arizona, say it's a Creighton or Virginia or a Baylor.
Oh, give me Virginia.
Oh, yeah, Virginia somehow makes it that far. Duke, I'm taking Duke as well.
Beat
So
me,
I mean,
Virginia.
things happen in the tournament, man. The weird matchups happen, so I wouldn't be too shocked. So you have Alabama advancing to the championship game. On
Yep.
this side for me, I have Arizona going up against Michigan State. Here's where I do think Michigan State's run ends. Um, I think that, again, this would be a good game, a potential overtime game, which is how that has the feel of. But I'm going to take Arizona to go to my championship game. Don't love it as far as just a pure talent perspective, but I think it's a part of the draw is kind of where what happens. And Arizona has let me down over the years in the tournament, but I do think this is a year where they're at least competing to the very end there. So I'm taking Arizona to advance my championship. And then as we look at the other side of the bracket, so you have, correct me if I'm wrong, Kansas going up against uh,
Texas.
Texas. Okay, so Big 12 rivalry here. We just saw this game play out in the Big 12 championship game. Tell me, who
Yeah.
do you think comes out of this one?
I didn't do this on purpose. I honestly didn't even like bother to like I wasn't checking the top side of my bracket when filling out the bottom or anything. It just happened just so happens that they're gonna play each other again. But looking at it, it makes me scared because I have Kansas moving on, but I feel like Texas kind of has their number. I'm gonna stick with my gut, and I'm gonna say the Jayhawks get their revenge, and move on to the championship game. But I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if this is what we get, and it's another Texas blowout where they win by 15 points, and the Jayhawks crumble to Texas, and that's their kryptonite this year. But we'll go with the Jayhawks to face Alabama.
Yeah, and I think that would be my pick as well if that is the matchup. I think the revenge factor is definitely in play. But because mine is Gonzaga, Texas, and I already kind of foreshadowed it, Gonzaga is going to the national championship game for me to take on Arizona. And as we look at our championship games, so you have Alabama going up against Kansas. Tell me, who you think is the national champion this year?
Kansas ain't gonna repeat. I got Bama beating them. It's gonna be if this is what we get, it's gonna be a great game. I think it's gonna be a pretty high scoring game, maybe 150s, high 140s. But I think Bama gets the job done, edges out Kansas for the close repeat, but they're not gonna get it.
Yeah, and people are gonna have a field day with Brandon Miller winning a national title if this in
Oh
fact
boy.
happens.
Oh
Oh yeah,
boy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. As far as my championship game goes between Gonzaga and Arizona, I already foreshadowed it. Give me Gonzaga. That's where my futures lie heavily on Gonzaga this year. And I think they win this convincingly for their first title in school program history with the expectations as low as they've been over the past decade almost, maybe. And I'm sorry, Nick. I think they get it done.
I made a pact to myself that if Gonzaga didn't win the year that they played Baylor, I think that was their year. I told myself, obviously I can't see the future, right? But I told myself if they don't win that year, it's not going to happen. I'm going to stick to that until I'm proven wrong. But I mean, given if that was my matchup, you have Zona versus Gonzaga, right? I would take Zags in that spot too, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, I got to stay true to my pact with myself.
Totally fair. And that's going to do it for our bracket show this year over here on YouTube. And I want to thank Nick so much, not only for the help on this video, but all the conference tournament videos they put out, all the futures bets. Again, he's an amazing follow, not only for his daily picks, just for interacting on Twitter. He's one of the more interactable guys out there in that sports betting space. So go follow him at CBB Nick. And Nick, is there anything else you want to plug before we head out here?
No, that's it, man. You don't need to thank me for anything. I love talking ball, especially with you. I think obviously you guys follow Rob, but make sure you follow him on everything. Rob DFB, Rob Donaldson here on YouTube. Make sure you follow Rob's great capper, great friend. Yeah, but that's it. Yeah. I love talking ball with you, man.
Oh, absolutely great time of year to do it. And you'll obviously be back on to talk more college basketball before the season's done, I imagine. But
Oh yeah.
with all that being said, y'all, I appreciate you guys for checking out today's video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.